Welcome everybody to the next episode. What we're going to do today, prior to getting the motor installed, because obviously once you have the motor installed, it is pretty well impossible, but not improbable, to get to the steering. It just makes it a lot easier if you get it installed before you take and put the motor back in. So anyway, you can see here I've got the rag holding the ports. That kind of keeps everything nice and dry in there, so it keeps it from rusting to some degree while you're, rebuilding your transom and whatnot. So obviously we've gotten to the point now where we're going to go ahead and install everything again, and not necessarily test it out, but we are going to torque everything down to the proper specs, put all the cotter pins together, and also make sure we put our grounding strap in, because that grounding strap is very important as well. So let's double check here all the different parts you're going to need. This is pretty crucial. You'll need your upper and lower. These are actually the bolts that hold the steering in place, and then this is your pivot point, and then we've got our cotter pins that go through these bolts here, and then for our ground strap, that's what these last little three items are for. So make sure as you're proceeding that you have inventoried everything and you've got all the proper parts to proceed to the next piece here. So anyway, let's go ahead first and get the steering in place, and we'll go ahead and start some of these bolts. And just for everyone's edification, you will need a 15/16. There's a few times in your boat where you need it, and it's for the steering and then for the engine alignment for the front pieces. So you'll definitely need a 15/16 if you don't already have one. So anyway, let's go ahead and start this bolt and get the steering ready to install back. Okay, so one of the things you're going to notice when you install these is they don't actually secure this piece down as you'd imagine. Like, they don't thread into this block. What they actually do is they act more as a pivot point. So the other thing too is when I installed or removed this bolt, I think it was the upper or lower bolt originally, this thing was on way too tight. In fact, it actually slipped off and caused my hand to go numb for quite some time. I do recall that one. So they did put Loctite on it, and I can tell you right now, Loctite is not necessary. And the reason why I wouldn't use Loctite is because they use these cotter pins in here, and the cotter pins are going to obviously keep this thing from backing out once you get past the threads. So what's the point in using Loctite and a cotter pin? That's just way too much overkill. And as you can imagine, I'm not all about doing two levels of overkill on this. So anyway, you'll thread this all the way down as far as it'll go, and then once you have it all the way down, that will give you access to put your cotter pin back in place. And we'll go over the torque specs too here in just a minute. Okay, so we got all the bolts tightened down here. Let's talk about the specs now for torquing this. Okay, so these right here, 35 to 40 foot-pounds of torque. Once you got them torqued bottom and top, go ahead and slide your pin in there and go ahead and give it a little bend on this side. You should notice once you have everything installed that this actually kind of pivots a little bit. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and take our cotter pin. Got the top one installed already, and we'll slide it in place. All right, and I'll just go in the back and bend that one side out. Okay, so you can see right here, this is going to be our next objective. And you'll have this little longer pin that has this provision at the bottom for another cotter pin. Just make sure you go ahead and grease this pin, because this is a pretty significant pivot point. So you need to put some marine grease on this and then slide it into place, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so you can see in there I got the marine grease in there, and basically what it does is it drops down, and you'll see towards the bottom between those two bolts there, that's where you're going to slide in your cotter pin. Because you don't have your stern drive in place now, you can actually take and move that steering arm left to right a little bit with no problem. So I'll go ahead and put the cotter pin and show you what that looks like here. Okay, probably one of the most critical steps, and I've forgotten it before many times, is to put this grounding strap on the steering arm. If you wait to do this while the motor's in here, there's a good chance that you will drop that bolt. It'll fall down in here and you'll never find it. So do yourself a favor, before you have the motor in here and you got plenty of space, take your time and thread this grounding cable against that steering arm. Definitely a must. It goes right there, connects from your transom bracket over here. So critical piece. Let's go ahead and attach that now. Okay, so just very carefully snug up that bolt. It's going to be only a few inch-pounds, so don't get crazy with it. Just snug it up, and you'll use your 7/16 wrench to do that, and that will complete the grounding requirements for this part of the project. So you can see here we've got the greased up pivot point in place. We set our other bolts here backed up by our cotter pins, and those are in place. Both cotter pins, and we have the cotter pin at the bottom over here in place as well. I'm going to leave this rag here just because until I get the motor in, I don't want anything getting into those power steering points, clogging it up. So we'll leave that in play there. But that's actually what it looks like when everything is installed. You'll see the cable itself kind of wraps around towards the controls. But that is pretty much it for the steering. Pretty simple, pretty easy video. There are some tutorials on how to bleed this system. I can go into that into detail if you like. Just put some comments in the field below and I'll help you out with that. But I'm going to go ahead now, conclude this video a little early, and then I'm going to get in here and basically just wash everything in here. You can see I've got a ton of epoxy dust everywhere and a little bit of Kevlar all over the place, so kind of want to clean this area up a little bit. So anyway, I hope you liked the video. Stay tuned to the next episode. I believe we're going to drop the motor in on the next episode. I think we're to that point, so stay tuned. It's going to be an awesome little piece of the episode puzzle here. So we'll catch you on the next one. As always, hit that subscribe button, like the video if you thought it was helpful, and we will catch you later. Have a good one.